I know most of you never expected to be marching out in open rebellion. But this is the day. This is the day we will restore some pride to this land.
Why don't you fight the bloody Hun?
Nice to see we have some support here, Jack.
Don't worry about it.
Attention!
Are your platoon ready?
No, sir. Most of the men don't even know how to load their rifles. Any idea where we're going? There were rumors we're being sent to France.
I might as well tell you, but keep it to yourself, mind. We're going to Ireland. Apparently there's been some trouble over there.
Níl chance a gine héimeis. An chuid eile den tíar fós na bid lepacha. Is ní éon gearmaní chun teach le muid a thorthal. Thomas den hain.
Rebels are preparing to oppose our troop movements from Kingstown to Dublin. The 7th will follow the coast road, cross at Mount Street Bridge.
Ready! Ready!
How did you know we were in Ireland?
We heard the regiment had landed, so we came down hoping to see you.
I'm glad you did. When this whole business is over, I'll spend some time with you and the children.
Do be careful, Freddie. I love you.
I love you too.
Iggy Ray, guys. Ná squeal, the closig shiv uimsha.
Christ on a million na cuam. It was a baptism of fire, all right. Over 100 casualties is a terrible loss to one battalion.
Bhí marún ar na Tommies. Ní raibh isciú carvas around a pillar ag teacht. Agus bhí a chuid marú bhád
Come on, move on, move on!
Thank you, Private. Goats, bring your men up from reserve. You will support the attack. And Goats, see if you can rustle up some grenades, will you?
I'll see what I can do.
Get me Irish Command HQ on the line. Quickly! General Lowe, sir, this is Colonel McConkey of the Sherwood Foresters. Our men are facing stiff resistance and the advance into the city has stalled. However, I believe I have found a way that we can outflank the rebels' position.
No. You must press home direct frontal assaults until you overwhelm the rebel garrison at all costs.
But, sir, pressing forward is suicidal. We will lose many more men.
You have your orders, Colonel.
Yes, sir.
They were officered by people who seem to have the arrogance of the officer corps very often, that they assume that they're amongst ignorant natives whom all they had to do was wave their sword at them and they were going away, because the Mount Street Bridge is almost a classic of Charge of the Light Brigade stuff. Go on, go on. All they had to do was go up Bagot Street. Take Dublin Castle area, take Jacobs, no problem to them. Instead, they were going to charge.
The British High Command was determined to press forward with disastrous frontal assaults. With only their rifles for protection, scores of soldiers had been slaughtered on Northumberland Road by the well-barricaded Irish volunteers. But the tide was about to turn. The next wave of Sherwood Foresters came equipped with heavy machine guns and, more importantly, grenades. With these tools, the British tactics might finally work.
They managed to manoeuvre around the back of 25 Northumberland Road into a laneway called Percy Place. There, the soldiers managed to climb the wall at the rear of 25 Northumberland Road and force an entry through the back door.
Nachreg Anya a Yerin Lat nar Rashid Agla Reeve. The Urn the Greven Shred. Ho Fearver. Greven Roach yet heard my rifle. Give me a cra o Von Gabor Leshan Agla. Container read me an anfuish of all. On Vatius. I'll learn a giant squealer rush.
Grace took cover behind an old metal stove, and that is what saved his life. The British left the building, not knowing that Grace was still alive and hiding in the basement.
On the north side of the city, Ned Daly's battalion had been encircled by British forces. The noose was tightening around his men.
Machine gun sin aithniú, tá sé duine sláid an sráid. Sílam go bheits Jarvis trí atá sé ach nílam cinch. Buggy job. Take these and find that position. We can't move in the street with them firing down on us.
Tá sé agam. They are in the hospital, sir.
You! Take the field glasses and act as a spotter. Ní bhaid ag chance amháin at, Frank. You have to each man first time. Good luck.
I suppose
that quick turnaround, the whirlwind of getting these soldiers into action, a full division, a huge amount of men and logistics that actually goes with them, is quite extraordinary, really. And there are stories of things like the Sherwood Foresters leaving grenades behind in barracks and not having enough room to get machine gun teams onto boats to get them into Dunleary or Kingstown as it was then. When you hear those stories, it's very easy to understand why there was so much confusion when they actually did finally get into action in Dublin. A couple of days prior to the outbreak of the rebellion, they were fully expecting that the first place that they would see any action would be in trenches in France, and all of a sudden they found themselves on streets in Dublin, a completely different environment and a completely different situation to the one which they had expected to find themselves in.
With number 25 captured, the Sherwood Foresters now turned their attention to Clanwilliam House, across Mount Street Bridge.
It was 5 p.m. when the order to advance came through. And that's when we took our part in the rebellion.
Fine. Close to the wall. Tall game.
Okay. Move forward. Keep close to the wall.
Squeal! That wall! There! Tommy! Take out forward! Head down! Very calm!
Honnig slua gur hrúpin na Bratainna I Jennifer a nús bór Northumberland. Thug cuid acu ruúthar faoi Hach Malone, ach thug an chuid is mú acu air an rehad. An muid fáilte rumpur in na píle. Chá ngeara nús. Chun si dorthú teacht.
On the bridge! Take him out! Come on, Take it out!
Whenever we had the opportunity, we would rush houses with small troops of men, and that way we advanced gradually. But the fire we were under at times was terrific.
And as the fighting went on through the day, they were advancing on the whistle, as they had been training to do on the training fields of Watford.
Keep close to the wall! Keep your head down! Keep close to that wall!
In the end, by the time they reached Mount Street Bridge, they were crawling and walking over each other's bodies. It was pretty ghastly.
Keep your head down! Window! First floor!
Bhí mar fionsín is gach tro. Bhí man an pléis gan a chlostal hí staire, agus bhí deatach ar fud na háte. Húmar sí staire, ag cuinál gar go bhála. Ag go le seach sa siomra gléista, chonig mé Paddy Doyle agus Dick Murphy ina lí marv. Bhí a rifle fósing rima láv ag Murphy.
Lads, good luck with. The feds glyn in with the leyen of. Comid Kulu and ish. Time brodo lasif. Tá vor dúlgus dénta gach chéin duine goibh. Gus tá ábhar smuinte tucha den na Tommies. Tá tart orm. Christ. Mick Malone. What Seamus too. You're ceart down the hen, look at Seamus at alcohol and chin low hen.
First the mach. But I'm a king show. Sure, to make roch lick boss all like love and assassin.
Dog my Reynolds book for an orlor. He'll look on full. Tom Walsh a lead Tivlesh. Agus me géalú, bhí man an na saidrí a chlustáil ag liúra agus ag ceiliúra tíomh me in Mount Street.
When I had time to stop and look around and see all my dead comrades just lying there in the road. I mean, this was the first time they'd ever fought. And it was their last. Looks like you had a lucky escape, sir. Irish bastards. I'd like to kill the bloody lot of them.
You see the nurse there? She's Irish. Everyone here helping is Irish.
Why did they do it, sir? When we're at war? When their own boys are in the trenches dying?
They believed in something, I suppose.
The Foresters took enormous casualties, 183 wounded and dead. The rebels were using Houth Mauser guns with soft-nosed bullets, which entered fairly neatly into the body but exited with a very large and messy wound. And so the soldiers were going down with very serious wounds indeed.
Jesus, fucking shellers are using dum-dum bullets. When are we going to get the chance to give them a taste of their own medicine? It's all right, it's outside. Town's riddled with Fenians. You can't trust any of them mix.
Brother! Stop talking rubbish. Get your kid together, we're moving out. They're sending us to the other side of the city. A place called North King Street.
Finally, we take the fight to them.
I mean, when we look at the British Army, we do generally think that we're looking at an experienced army, probably the best in the world. But we forget that it's made up of men, for the army that came here, of men with little and no experience. They got as far as Mount Street Bridge, where hundreds of their colleagues had been killed and wounded. At the time, little was known about the effects of war on the individual in it. And these people would have been traumatized by what happened here. You do things in war that you wouldn't do in ordinary life. It changes you, and it does not change you for the better.
The battle now moved to the tenements on the north side of the city. And this time would be the citizens of Dublin in the firing line. With the main route secure, troops began to surround Ned Daly's volunteers garrisoned on North King Street. The English were not going to have it easy. This area was a warren of densely populated small streets. Moving a large force of men in this part of Dublin was almost impossible. The British attack could only come from one direction, down Bolton Street to North King Street. Their aim was to cut Daly's garrison in two. The target of this assault was Riley's Fort, which stood on the crossroads of North King Street and Church Street. Riley's was the beating heart of Daly's position. The job of defeating Daly's 1st Battalion fell to the South Staffordshire Regiment and their commanding officer, Colonel Henry Taylor.
We have established a cordon around the area being held by the rebels. Any adult male found within the cordon is to be considered a rebel. Do not hesitate to destroy any building being held by the rebels.
The South Staffordshire Regiment, like the Sherwood Foresters, was drawn from Lichfield and Staffordshire area. Not very well trained, but slightly better trained than the Sherwood Foresters. And they were the relief battalion. They came up behind the Sherwood Foresters, relieved them at Mount Street Bridge, and then went on to do some fighting in the city centre, in which the reputation of the regiment suffered gravely.
Get into position. We will press home the attack. Good luck, men. Dismissed.
Assault on the enemy position has failed. We've been forced to retire.
We're making no bloody headway, Captain. The rebels are too well barricaded. A frontal assault would be completely useless. It's time for a change of strategy. We shall play these Sinn Féiners at their own game. I want you to get a couple of armoured cars to these houses. Get a company of men into each. When they have secured the premises, they are to begin tunnelling through the walls into the next house, and so on, gradually outflanking the enemy. When they come in line with the enemy barricades, they are to open fire. A sustained assault on the enemy position will begin at that point. And remember, Captain, any men caught in the houses are up to no good and are to be considered enemy combatants. The civilians should have cleared the area by now. Dismissed.
Very good, sir.
Well, the area around North King Street was extremely difficult for the British Army to fight in. There were large buildings, there were many windows, there was large numbers of civilians. It was one of the worst places that the British Army found themselves within during the rebellion. They suffered large numbers of casualties trying to take it, and obviously because of that they felt that they needed some sort of innovation, some way that they could actually change the tide of the battle.
They devised a plan of using armoured personnel carriers. These were lorries, flatbed Daimler lorries, and smoke boxes from the Inchicore Railway Works mounted on the back. The makeshift armoured personnel carriers were driven at high speed into North King Street.
Every bullet clanged and jarred through your head. It wasn't possible to fire back either. You couldn't discharge a rifle in that confined space. Stay close behind me, men. When the door opens, go straight for the nearest houses and get inside. Stay in cover and only fire when you have a clear target, right? That way, you may get out of here in one minute. We backed the tank into a pub and we all poured out.
Get your asses in here! Hurry up! Christ!
It wasn't until the next day we discovered one fellow had been hit just as he got out.
These vehicles reversed up to the doors of a number of tenement houses on that street. The soldiers debussed, kicked in the front doors, and then took up positions within these tenement houses.
Dancing. Keep an eye on those rooftops, right? The worst thing was staring out into North King Street, scanning the rooftops, constantly peering into the night until my eyeballs felt like footballs.
Shinners on the roof!
One young fella was certain we'd been fired on from behind a chimney, so he riddled the stack, bringing the whole thing tumbling down. A complete waste of ammunition. There wasn't a shinner in sight.
Ceasefire! Ceasefire, men!
They then began mouse holing. That means tunnelling from one house to the other, bringing them nearer the volunteer positions.
I was in command of the 2nd 6th South Staffordshire Regiment. Early on Friday, I had attended a briefing with Brigadier General Lowe, commanding the operations. He instructed us that no hesitation was to be shown in dealing with these rebels, that by their actions they had placed themselves outside the law.
They're being led by a man who I don't think had sufficient experience in his attitude of taking no prisoners, purely from the manual of an imperial force conquering the natives, because he was a military man and they have a profession, and their profession is how to kill and how to kill efficiently and how to do it without it affecting your conscience. And I think he was the wrong man in the wrong place for the job.
It was about 5:30 in the morning when a corporal and 11 men came to the house. They were terribly excited. If I had not opened the door to them, they would all have been shot in the street.
Open up in the name of the king!
You're just in the nick of time, missus. We're gonna blow this place up. 20 men in this house. You, hands up! Search them.
No one will fire on you from this house. We all support king and country. Half the folks on this street have men at the front.
Not far enough! Look what a bullet nearly did for me. I could have lost my life. Take your man up the stairs!
What are you gonna do? Patrick!
Don't worry, Nelly. We'll be fine.
Move! Let's give these Fenian pigs an ounce of English lead.
Sometime after, I heard a voice upstairs crying, "Mercy, mercy, don't put that on me." And then resisting as if he was being tied down. The old lodger in the upper rooms heard me husband crying. And as they killed him, heard his last words. "Oh, Nellie, Nellie, Jewel."
In North King Street, the South Staffordshires lost it. They were fighting under ridiculously harsh conditions. It was hot, they were tunnelling through the houses, they were under constant fire, and they were taking constant casualties. And when they broke into some houses and found civilian males, they frankly murdered them. They shot them, they tied them up, they bayoneted them, and they killed them.
A ghastly feeling came over me about 5 in the evening as I fancied my husband dead. The officer said, "There is one of those men shot through the brain, and it is not a nice sight for you to see." So I told him I only wanted to see one man, my husband. The following morning, a corporal came and asked me if I required any privilege. I said, I require no privilege, only to be allowed to bury my husband, who was innocent.
Colonel, I really must speak with you. Your men are guilty of a terrible outrage.
My men are guilty of nothing. They followed orders and put down a violent rebellion committed by traitors to the crown.
15 innocent men and boys lie dead on North King Street, murdered by your soldiers. The perpetrators must be brought to justice. Now I want to know what you are going to do about it.
Nothing! My men did their duty. If residents of this street were killed, I can assure you, were they not combatants, they were aiding the Sinn Féin rebels and as bad as them. I stand by my men's actions today. We are at war. Take this man out of my HQ now! Myself, my adjutant, and other officers were constantly up and down King Street, and we received no complaint of any sort from any resident as to men having been shot, and no complaint of any improper conduct on the part of any of the men. My men were fired at, and they fired back. And any person in the upper rooms of houses, civilian or soldiers, might easily have been shot in that way.
A military inquiry into the massacres was presided over by Colonel McConaughey of the Sherwood Foresters, whose men had suffered such devastating casualties on Northumberland Road. He found that no individual soldier from the South Staffordshire Regiment could be held responsible for the killings.
Tragedy about these atrocities, which occur from time to time where all men fight, is the cover-up that occurs afterwards. And there was a cover-up of what the South Staffordshires did in North King Street. Nobody was ever arrested. The soldiers that were known to have participated in it were shipped out pretty quick.
Take these dispatches down to HQ. Let them know operations are completed here.
If you cover it up, it looks like a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy.
Across the city, the rising was turning against the rebels. However, on North King Street, Ned Daly's men were still holding back the enemy.
Edward Daly, at the end of that Easter week, it was estimated that he had 350 men, women and young boys fighting in and around the Four Courts area. They had held off over 2,000 British soldiers, many of them of the North and South Staffordshire Regiment.
The military party was practically wiped out. If they had kept boring through the walls, creeping up on us gradually, we'd have stood no chance. Some officer, however, clearly lost his head and sent those lads out to their death.
The Tommies ran right under me. All I had to do was fire down upon them. One by one, we knocked them over. It was a terrible slaughter. And to this day, I can't understand why they decided to rush things.
Our supply of ammunition was exhausted. Our rifles were getting jammed with continuous firing.
You're gonna be okay, son. Help is on the way. Come on! Come on!
After 2 days of constant fighting, our garrison had been reduced to 7, 8 almost stupefied men.
Lads, we've done all we can here. We're gonna have to abandon our position. You've done your country proud, lads.
But there was a sense of pride amongst us that we had defied the might of England.
But it was the cost to human life that ultimately impinged, I think, on Pearse. When he saw the citizens being shot down, and he said to prevent the slaughter, and all the government that was in the GPR, what was left of them at that stage, agreed with Pearse, and that surrender was inevitable.
I'll eat him. Come on, man, gather round. Men. Tom Brodu, lassif. You fought well against overwhelming odds. And I know we still hold most of the positions we took on Monday. But in the rest of the city, the situation is hopeless. I've received orders from Commandant Pearse. We must surrender unconditionally to the British immediately. Even if we wanted to fight on. We must obey orders. This is not the end. Now, when the people realize what we have done, when they see what an Irishman fighting on Irish soil can achieve, then they will rise up and cast off the shackles that bind them. And the next fight won't be like this one. We will learn, we will adapt, and we will take the fight to the British. I may not be here to see it. Agus cús mórtaslum. Gur seas me tíbh sa bharna boil. Sinead, chula tú ara. Fág for gunny ar a mouth. Gréiste gilum. Siúla míad amachas an áit seo go bródúil. Mar tá sí sin tiltte go maithagí. Amen. Guns on the table.
Ned Daly, in an attempt to escape, kept his uniform on as commandant and knew that this was his death notice, although he hadn't been so well known to the British that he might well have taken off his uniform and removed and escaped safely. But Daly was not that kind of man.
The 6 days of the Easter Rising had left Dublin devastated.
The people, they'd lost their livelihoods. In some cases, they'd lost relatives. In many cases, they'd lost their homes. All wars are made of people, and it's something we do forget. We talk about heroics, we talk about, our films, our books, etc., all made up of heroism and great acts of heroism. Everywhere you saw people affecting people, being affected by people. The ultimate end of this was that there were no winners in 1916. The rebellion itself, an absolute failure.
I knew my grandmother very well. She never talked about anything that happened in 1916. The subject was never mentioned. Well, you don't think about the human side. It's not talked about. It's not sort of the way history is taught, is it? That there's sufferers on both sides, and people who are absolutely nothing to do with the decisions or reasons for going to war are the ones who suffer.
There's nothing we can do for him. Nothing we can do. He's gone.
For me, the men who came here were volunteers for France. And if they had died in France, they would be remembered far more fondly than having died in Dublin. But they died in Dublin in a fight which wasn't very glorious. And their memory has been forgotten, swept under the carpet. The graves are very rarely visited indeed. In fact, I and a few colleagues are perhaps the only ones who visit the graves of those who fell in Dublin and are buried in Dublin. And I think that's very sad, for yes, it was a fight that was laced with politics and embarrassing to England and to England's history in Ireland, but they were soldiers, and they fought like soldiers, and they died like soldiers, and I think they need to be remembered as soldiers.
Chui Sheshrag and Trina Shroud in a Kilwainon. The Vjog in a Fechenterin. A Kilwainon, Curses Dache, Killing, Lumhin. Shomer Bjog, Gan Laba, Gan Entros gone. Hines me hen a macher and Talavags, Hui me Hulla, Trechte.
And with your help, I will not sin again.
Attention! On my command! Ready? Aim!
We marched our squads into Kilmainham prison. The men with memories of that day had no qualms about doing their job.
Fire!
Heis Bracken lay. Hulme, Foshram, Urcher, Gunny, Flescam. Chiapas Grev, Ryan and Ogli, Fossa Trid. Huimer Ashachola.
Cover! Order arms!
I can't say I felt much, except it was a job that needed to be done.
Stand at ease.
On Shin, Frab, Sergeant, Bjog, Stach, agus Chris Lawflam. Chiapas go Lavachi who at Roshi. Nor Hulatun Urcher imagine. Hula me. Cer dé féin. Is dimmi sé. Dimmi sé gan fragre.
Edward Daly was among the first to be executed for his part in the Rising. He was one of the most successful volunteer commanders that Easter week. Arthur Dixon was sent to France in 1917, where he was wounded by a sniper, ending his war. Dixon became a Quaker and a lifelong pacifist, dying in his sleep in 1979. Piers Beasley went on to become the IRA Director of Communications during the War of Independence and a senior officer in the Free State Army. After Ireland's Civil War, he retired from public life and worked to promote the Irish language. Sergeant Charlie Faulkner was sent to France with the Sherwood Foresters. He survived the war and returned home to a quiet life in Nottingham. James Doyle evaded arrest and continued to fight the British. After Ireland achieved independence, he faded from history. Although Sergeant Cooper went on to fight in the trenches, he was forever affected by the events in Dublin that Easter week. Michael Malone was buried in the garden of 25 Northumberland Road. A year later, his body was reinterred with full military honours in Glasnevin Cemetery. His old comrade Seamus Grace was there to say a final goodbye. He lived with the guilt of Malone's death for the rest of his life. The Shoalight brothers went to prison for their actions in Easter week. Both continued to work for Irish freedom after their release. When the War of Independence ended, they refused to take sides in the Civil War.
My father had a very high regard for John Redmond. And the other constitutional nationalists that he knew of, such as Francis Ledwidge and Tom Kettle, both very fine poets. In fact, one of his favourite poems, as I recall, that he often used to recite, was the lines of Kettle that went, they died not for a flag, nor a king, nor an emperor, but for a dream born in a herdsman's shed and the secret scripture of the poor.